Om Shanti, Sister Jayanti.
Om Shanti Arnaben.
And Om Shanti to everyone. I'm sure everybody's been looking forward for this time, especially with Sister Jayanti. And I want to say that Sister Jayanti was just with us at the retreat center. She left a couple of hours ago. She gave us 4 full days. There was the UK teachers meeting. We had about 65 resident teachers and another 10, 15 just coming for the day. It was really lovely. The beauty about having teachers come to Baba's retreat center is they add their purity. They add their yoga power. They add their glow. And you can immediately feel that in the vibration. So it's less work for us because they're adding and helping the energy to move efficiently, smoothly. And I just want to share a few things that I took from the retreat. So one of the stories that Sister Jayanti shared was when, I hope you don't mind me repeating, I'm sure it's because with this video, it stays, Jayanti Ben. It stays forever. So the story is that somebody had brought a sweater for Dadi, and not for Dadi, but for Dadi to give to somebody. And Dadi loved it. And then Dadi asked this person, how much is it? And he said, it doesn't matter, Dadi. And Dadi said, well, yes, because I want another 6 pieces. I want to give it to others. And he said, but Dadi, tell me, why couldn't I think of that? Why couldn't I have such a big, generous heart? And Dadi said, well, in order to have a generous heart, you need a clean heart and you need an honest heart. So that's something to think about. When your heart is pure and clean, honest and clean, then you can have a big heart. Another thing I like, Jayanti Ben, is if I slip up, if I make some mistake, if I slip up in the drama, it's not drama's fault. It's my fault. And then there was a question about how are we going to create that oneness, that one thought at the end? How are we going to be on that same wavelength? And Sister Jayanti was saying that it's when we are all, like the one common denominator between all of us is our love for God. And so like in any family, when there is a crisis, we pull together because of our love for the clan, the kul. And so here too, it's our love for God that's going to, bring us together. And it's also our purity. And a lovely thing that Sudesh Didi shared was, she was saying, awareness is that I have these qualities. Body consciousness is that these are my qualities. And arrogance is that you need to accept my qualities. So you can imagine it was very rich. And also the cultural program was one of the most unique ever, because Liz, who was one of the MCs, she got up and said, well, we don't have any items. And then we had the most beautiful, most hilarious 1 hour where everybody just got up spontaneously, one after the next, without any inhibition, and just shared a story or a joke or something. And it was just so beautiful. So just to give you a taste of what we've been through. Thank you, Sister Jayanti. Sorry to take a few extra minutes.
No problem.
Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, and Om Shanti to everyone. And yes, time seems to be flying very, very fast. And all the Avyakt Murlis and the Sakar Murlis are exactly as we need at the time that we need them. And so this time, Baba's Murli, talking about 3 forms. This was December 94. And so it's interesting that Baba first brought us to the point of the 3 forms and then later on the 5 forms. But the 3 forms are actually very, very significant. And so the first form, the Brahmin, the second form, the angel, and the third form, the deity. And Baba's definition of Brahman was very lovely, because Baba spoke about how a Brahman soul means victorious, a beautiful blessing in itself. I just have to remember that, and I'll experience victory happening in a very natural way. And a Brahman means to be able to enjoy the spiritual life. And of course, Baba knows that we go through all sorts of battles. And so Baba's point was that if you're a Brahmin and you know that there's victory ahead, and the Brahmin is going to become the angel, it's not said that a warrior becomes an angel. It's not said that a warrior can become a deity, but the Brahmin becomes the angel, and the angel becomes the deity. And so warrior has no place in any of this. And of course, Baba knows the battles we go through. And at times it's because as a Brahmin, I know very clearly, I understand all the knowledge. So I know what it is I need to do and I have to do. My intellect is telling me that very, very clearly. But then on the other side, my mind goes through storms and my feelings and my emotions get in the way and pull me off in a different direction. And that's where then there's the tug of war. My conscience telling me one thing and my mind pulling in another direction. And if I go through that stage where then I actually fall into that trap of being pulled by my feelings and my emotions, then of course a mistake is made. And as a result of the mistake, then Maya gets a chance to enter. And there's a whole sequence of all of these things. Because when I forget I'm a Brahmin and my birthright is of victory, and to be able to draw that power through my awareness and take that strength from Baba, I miss out on that. And so firstly, it's my awareness that's become weak instead of being solid and stable in the consciousness of who I truly am. That's become weak. And so in that awareness, then I'm going to miss out on the connection with God. And further, then I'm missing out on attainments and power. I'm beginning to feel empty. And so Maya takes a chance and I make a mistake and I'm trapped. And so that sequence of awareness and then loss of connection, loss of attainment, loss of power, a mistake being made, and that's it. And so Baba reminding us of who we are. This sequence Baba's been talking about quite a bit, Sakar Murlis and Avyakt Murlis in the recent times. And so that stage where I remember I'm aware that I'm a Brahmin soul, I have a right to all of Baba's powers, not just some powers, but all of the powers. It's my birthright. And when I forget that I am a child of God, a Brahmin soul, victorious, then in that condition of weakness, of course, then instead of claiming my rights, adhikari, I become a bhikkhari. I'm asking God for help. I'm asking God for power. And yes, Baba's going to give me a little bit, but I don't have the capacity to take anymore. I've already become very weak and so distant to God. It's a very interesting definition of Brahman from Baba. And so when I stay in that awareness, then I'm joyful, I'm happy, and I enjoy Brahman life. I enjoy Sangam Yug. And then when I forget this, then I'm struggling, I'm battling. So the first battle is with my own conscience. Then the next battle, of course, is with the vices. And just think about how instead of claiming all the treasures from God that God is willing to give me, the love, the purity, the truth, the joy, the peace, when I don't experience that connection because of my loss of awareness, I don't experience that attainment. What happens then is that I succumb to anger and greed and ego and lust and all those things, the subtle addictions, are able to pull me back again. And so Baba's saying that, but that's not who you are. Remember who you are and take all your rights, all the powers, but also you have to be able to use the powers at the time you need them, not that you remember later on. And when the situation is there, you don't have that discernment capacity to be able to know which power it is you need to use at that moment. And so when you lose that discernment, then again, mistakes are made, or you remember later on, I should have done this, or I wish I had done this, but the moment's gone and the mistake's already been made. And then the definition of the angel, the one who's able to give God's message and the one who's able to be double light, the costume of light, but also the inner state of being, of lightness. Just think about how it feels when your sanskars, your nature, your relationships, your connections are touched by lightness. You carry no burden, you carry no load at all. And so this is a state that Baba's offering us, that state of freedom and being completely light. Yes, there are responsibilities that I have to look after, but I'm not burdened by them. There's no feeling of that being a burden. And because my nature is light, my sanskaras are light, relationships are light, then I'm able to take the support and help from all those around me. And they'll very generously and very easily give me that support, and the task will get done. But if I'm heavy in myself inside, carrying this burden, I'll have a lot of waste thoughts and think, well, nobody's going to help me. Why should they bother? I didn't help them when they needed help. They're not going to help me now. All these waste thoughts come. And then afterwards, when the moment has gone by and I'm even worse off than before, I'll say,
Shanti, ακούγομαι τώρα. Πείτε μου αν ακούγομαι.
okay. Okay. So that stage where I'm easy and light-natured, there's support and cooperation that comes to me. I get heavy and I get stuck, and maybe somebody's even offering me cooperation and I don't see it. I'm not able to take benefit from it. I'm caught up with all sorts of other things and I won't recognize that what they're doing is actually wanting to support me. I'll interpret it in a negative way. And so all the burdens, Baba said, well, do you have the habit of carrying a burden and you want to carry on carrying a burden? But no, you can just let the burden drop. Why? Because God, the Almighty, is with you. And with God's help, everything becomes very easy and possible. So become the double light angel and experience what it's like to be in God's company and be God's messenger and be the instrument to help others. Baba went into a lot of detail about the I and my that comes in. Firstly, and the difference between that stage of awareness of soul consciousness and being the Brahmin and all the respect, the titles of self-respect that Baba has given us that we've experimented with and enjoyed that experience. So that's the highest stage. And then there's the other stage, body consciousness. And in body consciousness, my identity is totally caught up with this: gender, age, family, position, possessions. But when we become Brahmins, I found that very quickly that passes away. Don't have to work on it a lot. Those external types of identity really slip away. Not too much work. Just because now the soul is shining, it has the awareness of the self, it has the experience of its own higher stage in meditation, and then Baba also mentioned, well, you experience it in meditation, but how come it doesn't stay through the whole day? And then becomes a big gap between what you're saying or thinking and what you're actually doing in real life. And so that stage, body consciousness, practice soul consciousness, and that will drop, it'll fall away. But the other stage, the stage of the arrogance of the body. And the arrogance of the body, Baba described as, I am a good yogi, I have very good specialities, I have a lot of creativity, there's a lot of things I can do for Baba, I'm doing this for Baba, and so on and so on. The I and my have come in. I'm not realizing that all the goodness that I have, the qualities that I have, is because God has blessed me with those. And God has given me this amazing opportunity of being an instrument through whom God can do his work. But I forget about Karan Karavanhar, the one who's doing directly and doing through others and myself also. And I ask myself the question, would I have been able to do any of this pre-Raj Yoga, pre-Gyan? I know for a fact I couldn't have. I couldn't have spoken to people about spirituality, couldn't have spoken to people about anything because I was very shy and just had a little circle of friends and that was fine. But I couldn't give talks. No way. I would have run a mile. And so everything that I have today is because Baba has given it to me. And so not to think this is my speciality, I am doing this, and without me, this couldn't have happened. All of that is my arrogance. None of it is true. It's God who has blessed me with gifts, and my return to God has to be that I use these in the way that God wants. If I think it's mine and it's I'm going to get stuck in the mud again, and those gifts will disappear. I won't be able to have those gifts. But that stage of the Brahmin being the benefactor for all has lifted me to the stage of being an angel, and now as an angel, just simply God's instrument to be able to share that light, that love with others. And of course, as I share, those blessings come back to me also. Baba had spoken about this a long time ago, saying that a time will come when many will say to you, we want to go to Madhuban. At the moment, way back, you're inviting them to Madhuban and they have all sorts of excuses and reasons why they can't go. My grandmother this, my father this, my mother this, my children this. And by then they're already too old to take a long journey to Abu, to India or anywhere. But that stage where I'm Baba's instrument and Baba is using me to share whatever is needed at the moment that it's happening, then I know that it's not me, it's not I, it's not mine, it's Baba's task. This is why we saw the Dadi is so light. Dadi Prakashmani taking on the mantle of leadership, age 49. And how did she do it? She did it so beautifully. And she must be one of the few longest living, working, serving modern day leaders who've been able to serve for such a long stretch of time. 1969 January through to around January 2005. Dadi was still around for a couple of years, but then her role was more of silence. But that period of time, it's a long time for one leader to have that authority and power that Dadi did. And so this awareness that it's not me, Dadi would always say, she would just go like this and we would understand. But this is Dadi, the one who was able to be an instrument, and all the other Dadis also. And so what do I do now? To let go of the arrogance of all the things that I feel are my specialities. when I let go of those, then the connection with God can be restored. And with all those qualities within the self, then Baba used a very lovely name. Instead of Devta, instead of Levta, the one who takes, be the Devta, Dene Vala, the one who's able to give. And so just being a conduit, taking from above and being able to share with all. And yes, of course, then you receive so many blessings from everyone in every corner. And then the deity. And Baba's not talking about the physical crown or the physical jewels. Baba's using this lovely expression that the jewelry that you are adorned with as a deity is the jewelry of virtues, the divine virtues. And so you can experiment with this even today. When we finish, experiment with the 3 forms, your perfect form as a Brahmin, your angelic form, and thirdly, your own deity form. So never mind about the robes and the jewelry and all of that. The deity is the one who actually embodies all the divine virtues. So whoever comes into contact with you, they see that divinity. They see those treasures of all the virtues. So Baba was inspiring us to become the deity so that we are able to be big-hearted and generous and just simply give and give. And then, yes, the 3 forms. Also, Baba spoke about the beautiful image of how the ruler sits on a throne. The ruler is anointed and the ruler is crowned. Part of the sacred ceremony of the coronation a few weeks ago here was the anointing with special oil. And so the anointing happens on the forehead. They didn't show it. It's so sacred that they put a screen around. But Baba anoints us with that sacred mantra of smriti, of awareness. Remember who you are, so that the soul is able to shine and sparkle. But also, remember your crown. It's a crown of responsibility. You know, sometimes people take up a responsibility and then say, oh, well, somebody else can do it. I don't have to bother with it. Well, hey, it's my fortune to be able to do this. But also today I'm rejecting it. Tomorrow, when again is the door of fortune going to open up? Because if I've dropped a responsibility, others lose their trust in me. And they're very hesitant to give me responsibility again. But also, if today I'm dropping responsibility, tomorrow, maybe I do get another opportunity, but who knows, maybe that habit has started and I'll drop it again. And so to wear the crown of responsibility of serving the world lightly, with joy, knowing that if Baba has given responsibility, he is going to make things happen. I don't know how to do that. He knows. I was mentioning in the teachers' meeting today that India has really reached the top of the tree in terms of service and also has served length, width, and breadth of India. But in terms of the president, the BK, Mrs. Murmu, she shared something very beautiful with us when we last met, when I met her with Ashuben last November. And she said, every day I say to Baba, Baba, you've put me here in this position. You have to tell me what I have to do. I don't know. You have to teach me. And so just imagine in that role, in that position, in Kali Yuga, with all the pressures and tensions that that involves. But she becomes a child asking Baba, Baba, you teach me. What do I need to do? You have to tell me. So for us, the same responsibility for world service, not just one country, for the world. And so can I say to Baba each morning, Baba, I'm available, I'm your child, tell me what it is you wish to be done, and thy will be done. Let it happen that whatever it is you want happens, and I'll just simply make myself available. You can teach me what you need to teach me. So the crown of responsibility and the tilak, the sacred tilak of consciousness, being anointed by God every single morning. As soon as I awaken, God anoints me with the sacred mantra of, you are God's child, you are the one who's taken spiritual rebirth, this is who you are. So the three forms, and Baba was saying, but it's very natural for you to remember these, just as it's natural for you to remember the Father, the Teacher, the Satguru. In the same way, remember these three forms. And I just want to mention that the theme of this week's Murlis seems to be twofold. Baba's reminder of how powerful Maya is, it's come up a lot, but also the way to be able to go beyond and become the conqueror of Maya, soul consciousness. Be in that awareness of who you are truly, with all the titles that Baba has given you. And in that awareness of the soul, then yes, you'll be able to take Baba's help and power and go beyond all the battles and struggles. So soul consciousness and the need to practice this in a very sincere and profound way has come up through all the Murlis. And the second thing that's come up has been the whole subject of Brahma Baba. Brahma Baba, the only son of God. That was an interesting thing that came up. Murbi Bacha, the most beloved, the only beloved son of God. And then all the rest, it's the genealogical tree, and it's all the children, the grandchildren, from one son, then the grandchildren. And from the grandchildren, of course, the tree grows, and the great-great-grandfather is Brahma Baba. But that idea of Brahma Baba, on the one hand, being the only son, and then on the other hand, Baba also talks about Brahma Baba, the senior mother. And so the wife of Shiv Baba and the couple, Shiv Baba, Brahma Baba, the mother, the father, and through them then the birth of the whole Brahmin clan. So the role of Brahma Baba in multiple ways has been coming up very beautifully. And of course, when we say follow the father, we're talking about two fathers, the incorporeal father, but also the corporeal father, the incorporeal parent of the whole of humanity, the father of all souls, and then the great-great-grandfather of the whole of the human family. Human beings, the connection of soul with one incorporeal, but on the human level, the connection with Brahma Baba, brothers and sisters of one family together. So when I think about the Murlis this week, the Sakar Murlis, this comes out as the strongest thing, this aspect. And today, of course, Baba mentioning how in Bharat there is the awareness of mother and father, but in the other traditions, only the father. And you can see that in today's Murli, Baba was focusing very much on God the Father, with an inheritance of heaven to give to us, to all of us. And so this concept of God the Father has carried on in other traditions. So these are some of the things that I've been picking up from the Sakar Murlis.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. I'll take off on this one point that has been kind of revolving in a few conversations. And that is when Baba said that there are mayavi yogis and mayavi gyanis. And so actually the question is that if I find myself in a relationship with such a soul who has such an attitude and behavior, then what should I do? And part two to that is how can I, if it's happening to me, how can I actually discern that this is Maya? Because after so many years, it's still attacking us. So what are we not doing enough to strengthen our discernment?
First, let me take that up because it's easier when I see it in another. And it's not so many in the Brahmin family. There's a few here and there. And they say that, I'm right. And they think that their understanding of gyani is absolutely correct, when in fact, the way Baba speaks about it is actually a bit different. And so who do I trust? Do I trust what Baba is saying? Or do I trust what this Atma, this soul is saying? And of course, if I'm lucky and I'm not impressed by this individual, the problem is that they can be quite charismatic and quite forceful in their way of speaking. And so we think that what they're saying is correct. But if I'm in the practice of Amrit Vela every day, hearing Baba's Murli every day, I'll go back and check with Baba's Murli. What is it that Baba says about any of these subjects that the other person is quoting? And there'll be a difference. And then I have to decide, do I become a follower of this individual or do I stay with Baba? And so that's very easy, but you can make your choice. But the second one, where I have become a soul that's influenced by Maya to such an extent that I think my intellect is clever, my intellect understands Gyan, and I know Gyan better than anybody else. I think there has to come a moment when something hits me. There's some trauma that happens. There's something that happens in my life that makes me come to a standstill, and I have the opportunity to review and reflect and ask, well, why am I in this condition? And probably then I'll be able to begin to understand that it was my wrong thinking and my arrogance of Maya that made me say that I know I'm right, or I am the best yogi around because I know God better than anybody else knows God. No, not true. None of those statements are true, because each one an effort maker, no one perfect, no one complete. And so how can I be a perfect yogi? If I were, I would have left the body and gone with the other advanced party souls to play my next role and be in the subtle region whenever Baba wanted me to be there. I wouldn't still be here. And so all of us effort makers, and we need to have that humility that Baba is the teacher and Baba is the one who's opening the doors of service and making service happen. It couldn't be anything else but that. So I think the pain, the trauma that comes from having a fall is what wakes up souls if they are in that condition of being mayavi, gyani, and yogi.
Is that the only way? I mean, that could be forever, that could take forever, or it could be so painful that it kind of blocks the intellect because they're so caught up in the trauma now that they're not facing the Maya.
You see, the thing is that because this idea has, the mayavi intellect is such that it's my intellect that's trapped by this falsehood, this false notion that I know everything, I know best. My interpretation of Gyan is the right interpretation. So Maya has actually attacked my buddhi and she's caught it. And I'm not going to be able to see it unless it's a painful state that I go through. Think about this, the Avyakt Murlis in which Baba has spoken about how when ego comes, that person does not listen, that person does not understand what you and I or anyone else has to say, or even what the Murli is saying. That's why they're in this condition. And only when they feel the pain, when maybe what they want isn't happening, the cooperation they seek isn't happening, they find all doors are shutting against them, then they'll say, what's going on? What's wrong? That'll make them stop and think. So I'm thinking about it in this way, that just as on a mild level, even with arrogance, this is what happens. And so in this state in which really the soul is completely trapped and it's its own ego, the arrogance, then of course it's going to be an even stronger thing that needs to happen to actually make that realization come through.
Thank you. So just last part of this question then, should another Brahmin try to help free this soul? Is it our responsibility as a Brahmin brother or sister to, or we should just let them go through their motions?
Usually several people have tried. It's not that nobody has tried, but they're not budging from that position of considering that they are right and that they know best. And so definitely, if anybody has the motivation, the courage and the time and the faith to say, I'm going to explain to them, go ahead, definitely. It's our duty to help another, but experience says that where many have tried and the door of understanding is still shut, then probably it's going to take drama to teach them its own lesson.
All right, thank you so much for that. Gentlemen, can we just go back to the loving and detached? I mean, normally we understood it quite clearly as loving to Baba and detached from everyone. And maybe in the English, we are just maybe sticking to the words. But Baba said, are you loving and detached? You are loving, but you make the mistake of being detached while being loving. You miss out on being as detached as you are loving.
It's a bit of a difficult sentence, and I also had to read it a couple of times. And so what Baba's meaning is that either we are loving or we are detached, because further Baba explains that it's not both together as it should be. Just as much I'm detached, to that extent, I should also be loving. And it's not just loving with God, but in detachment from bodily relations, and Baba spoke about those, I'm able in that condition of detachment to take God's love. And as I take God's love, then I should be an instrument to share God's love with all those around me. My maternal uncle, my paternal uncle, and all the things that Baba mentioned, all the extended family. Baba was talking about the extended family, not just the nuclear family, but all those I'm in contact with. I should be able to be detached. There's nothing I want from them, but I'm taking God's love, and I'm able to be an instrument to share God's love with them so that they are able, at some point, able to recognize God and come close to God.
Okay, thank you. And then somebody had this question. Remember the whole paragraph about dying alive, and an angel means, farishta means no rishta. So this person is then asking, then, gentlemen, what happens when either you get old or you get sick or something happens, you've broken all your connections with your relatives, and here you are sick and in a sense got nowhere to go. So what would you recommend in such a situation?
You haven't physically broken your relations with everyone around you. And you know yourself, your father is unwell, but he's still living with his son and daughter-in-law. So, but it was a connection of the intellect that Baba said. sorry, when Baba's talking about this state of, and of course the Gita speaks about break away from the consciousness of the body, the consciousness of bodily relations, bodily religions, all of that. But it's talking about moving the intellect away, not breaking a connection on a physical level. If I've broken the physical connection, then yes, I'm on my own and I'm going to find it very difficult to manage. But if my intellect has been connected with Baba and I've been giving them Baba's love, Nyara, Pyara, loving, detached and loving, then they're still very much around me. I haven't stepped away from them and they're there to help me and support me if I need that.
Okay. Yeah. Somebody's just responding that so this thing about dropping, being wrong to drop responsibilities. So is it not the right of an individual whether they should be able to drop their responsibility or not? Is it always wrong to drop responsibility? Because one knows for themselves, right, where they're at and how much they can do or not do. So what is your feeling around understanding or discerning when to take up responsibility or drop responsibility?
If I've been asked to take responsibility and I'm in that stage where I feel that, yes, this is coming to me from Baba, it's an opportunity, and I've said yes to that, I've taken it on. And then if there's something that happens, I become sick, I fall down and break my leg, or something happens, then I explain to those who are instruments, also in a position of responsibility, why it is I'm saying I can't manage. And then it's fine. It's where I'm not clear within myself. I spoke about Maya creating confusion and making you come into the battlefield. So I should, as Baba's child, have the clarity to be able to understand what's going on within myself. And even if it's not a physical, like being broken or physical illness, if it's just too much stress, too much pressure, and I can understand that, and I'm not blaming, I'm not complaining, I'm just saying I need to be with myself and Baba for a little while. Please find others who can help at the moment. And when I'm strong enough, I'll be back again. But where I say drop and I run off, then it leaves people wondering what's happened and how to be able to fill in that gap. And am I trying to find somebody to fill in that gap permanently, or is it literally for a short space while the person goes through their recovery? So yes, I know what it is I need. Sometimes, not always, sometimes. And if I think I need that space, I need that time, physical health, or even inner stress and the inability to manage, then let me take that chance to say, I want to step away for a little while.
Yeah, that's very clear. Thank you. In the blessing, Baba was using swabhav and nature. So in English, it comes across as nature and nature. So this is somebody's question in the chat. Would you like to clarify that? A complete renunciate is one whose thoughts, nature, sanskars, and actually swabhav, which is nature, are like those of the Father.
I think it's Baba just underlining, sometimes if you use a word in English language and in Hindi language, you're underlining something. And so because so often we excuse ourselves or we justify ourselves saying, well, my nature is like that, so you have to take it or leave it. I'm not ready to accept that I need to do anything about my nature. And so I think Baba's meaning is to underline that fact that nature can become something that I use as an excuse But what I have to do is to remember that as God's child, my nature should be like God. You know, they have the statement in the scriptures that we were created in the image of God. And then Baba's Murli is talking about being the embodiment of God's qualities. So created in the image of God, same qualities as God, being the embodiment of God's qualities, the same virtues as my Father has. And if I keep that in mind, then surely aspects of my old nature will begin to fade away. And my nature as God's child is going to start manifesting.
Lovely, thank you. And then, gentlemen, this question about, God forgiving us for our mistakes. So is it that he forgives? Well, is it that he doesn't see the mistake as a mistake, which is why he doesn't need to forgive in a sense? Is it okay? Is it one that he's the father and therefore he forgives, or is it that he just doesn't see any mistake in the drama and therefore there's nothing to forgive? Like even in one of the Murlis we had this weekend, you or Sudeshti, you were sharing that, Baba's been teaching us for how many years? And he keeps saying, sweet children, sweet children. I mean, he just does not focus on our bitterness. But what enables God to always stay forgiving, always stay positive, always stay sweet? Okay, he's God, but other than that, like, what is God understood?
God is the one who sees all, knows all, understands all. And of course, God is the one who also teaches us that there is something which is sin and charity, that there is something which is false and true, which is something which is wrong and right. So people today don't like it in that way. They want everything to be a sort of gray, in which it's not that this is black or white or everything's okay, everything is fine. We can just carry on as we are. So that's the lack of discernment of sin and charity, of truth and falsehood. And so Baba sees, it's not that God doesn't see, God sees completely, but yet God has a big heart, a generous heart, and a compassionate heart, and out of love and compassion, Baba wants the child to be able to move forward. And God doesn't forgive full stop. God forgives when God sees that there is deep realization and the determination to change, and enough yoga to be able to take such power from God that that old sanskar burns away. And so God is helping me by saying, okay, child, you've realized something. And so I'm going to give you another chance. And it's not just that God forgives once, twice, and not third time, but whilst there is still time in Sangam Yug, God forgives. And it's because God sees my desire of transformation. And if God is seeing that I keep repeating my mistakes and I'm not realizing anything and I'm not moving forward, then God steps away and says, well, that also is destiny. What can I do about it? But if God sees that I'm willing to do something about it with my realization, then God will say, okay, child, I'll take care of that account of sin. Your mistake can be annulled. And you just make sure that you do the right thing from now on.
Okay, thanks, gentlemen. Just a few questions, maybe quick answers. What's the difference between dehi abhimani and atam abhimani?
I think it's different expressions of the same, but also one aspect of difference is atam abhimani, when the soul is completely detached from the body and is in that awareness of I, the soul, and Paramdham, that is just simply the stage of soul consciousness. But they and dehi, I'm in the body, but yet I'm not body conscious. I'm in that awareness that I am the one that's the living being in the body, dehi. I am the living soul. And so I think maybe it's connected with this, that when I'm in the body, but still soul conscious, I can say, I am in this chariot, dehi. I am the driver in this chariot, the soul. And when I'm in that awareness of Paramdham, then just atam, abhimani, no connection with the body at that moment.
Right, thank you. Baba said you can destroy your sins through the total recognition of God. What determines our recognition?
My purity, my love, my faith.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we'll stop there. Yeah. Gentlemen, do you want to just share a little bit about your trip to New York, and then we can end in a few minutes?
Very beautiful scenes in Dallas. They have not just a center, but a center in a commercial area with the residents on top and space for about 100 people to sit there. And I was there after 18 years. So time really flows past so quickly you don't realize. And then in Boston, a beautiful, beautiful new space, which has been an add-on to the original center, that is like a whole new building that's been added on, and a space for 150 people to be there. And Dallas also, of course, has a little tapasya dham, a little retreat place also. So that was lovely. And here in Boston, there was an interview by an investigative journalist, Roberta Baskin. And so she asked beautiful questions, very intense questions. And the theme everywhere was circled around uncertainty, in the sense that these are very uncertain times in which we are living. So then the connection was how to remain strong in the midst of uncertainty, how to maintain my stability and peace in the time of uncertainty, connection, but they all circled around that. And so it was very lovely that she was able to do the interview. She's been a friend of the BK's for a long time. And then we had the call of time, and very powerful individuals there. Mostly all of them were new friends. 2 of them were people who we know from past dialogues. And it was a group of about 23 who came together. And there was a whole new team from that area who also was supporting the dialogue. So that was also interesting. And then there were 24 hours in Toronto. And the highlight there, again, a beautiful space and the public program there. But the highlight there was the federal minister for mental health. And he's of Italian origin. And he was very deeply interested in meditation. And a friend or contact of his, an Indian businessman, had connected him with Sister Shivani. And so he was fascinated by what he was hearing. And he went to India, and he was at ORC, met Asha Devi and also Shivani Ben, and understood more deeply what it is meditation could do for people. And his plan is to propose to the government in Canada to put across the ideas of meditation across all schools, because he's seeing that young people in particular are very deeply impacted by mental ill health at the moment. And this is true worldwide, actually, not just in Canada, but across the world. But here's a federal minister who's willing to take that on and sort it out and get that policy done, that there should be the integration of meditation and spiritual values into the curriculum in schools. So that was very exciting to know that this is a possibility.
Yeah, wonderful. So thank you so much. Gentlemen, just one last question. What's your favorite self-respect slogan, statement, point?
I am God's child. Very simple. Because when you remember who your parent is and the family that you belong to, it immediately raises your self-esteem. And to be God's child and in God's family, what higher aspect can there be of that?
Lovely, thank you. So next revision will be on June 5th. So see you all next week. We'll end with a nice meditation and Drishti from Sister Jayanti. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Arunaben, and thanks to everyone.
Just to know you, just to live inside your grace, just to feel you. In my heart, at this time, in this place, there is peace in every breath, as my mind dwells on your name, finding peace, peace within, treasure